I am going to hand it over to Michael Gebb.
Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. Technical difficulties this morning. Switching over to my new Surface. Actually, it's not that new anymore, but the Microsoft Surface computer, which I've told you guys before. I do like this computer. It's solid. It's nice. It's fast. The screen's a little hard to see at times, so I'm using a bigger screen behind it, so I'm looking up. That's why I'm a little funny, and I'll just turn my camera off here as I get going.
And I'm going to mute everyone, hopefully except Michael. So.
All right, I'm back. Today we're going to talk about vendor catalogs, which is a new feature in version 7.15. 7.15 has been released. You guys should all have received several notices about it, notices directly to you, notices about what we're going to send to the end users, and the end user notices as well. So hopefully everybody is aware of that. Hopefully everybody has this version, has installed it, has started playing around with it. It is version 7.15. It was a version change, so it does require a full install. You can't just use the update program. And it also requires that you enter a new product ID, so you will have to contact tech support, send an email, call them, whatever you need to do to get a new product ID for the new version. Other than the version number, and there's a bunch of new features in it, it's not a big version change. It does do a small conversion of your data files, but it's only doing some updates on the customer database and the contact databases, just moving some fields around so that we had to move the email field around so that we could sort by it. And then also a small change to your forms.dat file, which is your print buttons. And that's about it. So it is a new version. If you're doing multi-store, you have to make sure everybody goes to that version at the same time. But it's not a huge, scary deal to worry about that everything's going to change and stuff like that. So people should get on it as soon as possible. There's a lot of new features in it. Any bug fixes that have happened in the past 6 months have happened in version 7.15, not in 7.10. So if you had a problem previously that you're waiting for the fix, that's how you get the fix, is by updating to version 7.15. In 7.15, we added a number of new features, of course enhanced a bunch of things, but we also added some brand new things that didn't exist before. One of the things we added, a kind of last minute, and that to be fairly recently, not something we had really planned on, but an idea that came up and made sense that we went ahead and put in, is what we call vendor catalogs. And this is a project we've actually been wanting to do and have had several false starts on it for many, many years. Back as far as 20 years ago, we had this idea or this request. And it's been a long time coming. It's been something that's been difficult to do in the past. And we finally came up, thanks to Scott Welch, with a way of doing it that made it possible but also easily done within Keystroke in a way we're really happy with, a way that makes sense for us. The idea behind vendor catalogs is being able to access or host a vendor or a distributor or an organization's or manufacturer, what have you, but put their line card, their entire inventory, their list of products that they sell, make it available to you within Keystroke, so that as you're doing a purchase order or as you're doing a sales order, if there's an item's not in your inventory and you're going to order it from that vendor and you want to just have it dropped into your Keystroke inventory, or you just want to be able to look and see the vendor's products within the Keystroke type list, this gives you a way of doing that. And the difficulty of doing this in the past was every vendor, every manufacturer, every distributor has a different way of doing their line card, their inventory database. And doing all those and accessing them is an impossible task. You can't do the hundreds, thousands, or millions of vendors that are out there and actually say, yeah, we support theirs, we support theirs, we support theirs. It's just, we'd be chasing our tail the whole time. So the simple solution, and what works out nicely both from a programming standpoint and from a flexibility standpoint, is we created a vendor catalog database, and all it is an alternate inventory database. In fact, you can take a Keystroke inventory file, copy it over to a vendor catalog database, and it will work just fine. So what we're doing is we're taking the vendor line card, database, list of inventory items, what have you, and you're going to import them into Keystroke, but instead of importing them directly into your main live inventory database, you're going to import them into this alternate inventory database, what we call a vendor catalog. And there is a separate vendor catalog for each vendor, so you're not going to get one big huge master list and throw everything from everybody you ever buy from into one big place. It's going to go in separately. Each person's going to have their own, and we're going to review that and talk about that and see what all that happens. But I wanted to lay the groundwork and let you know where we're headed. I'm going to quickly just jump and give you one more quick overview before we jump into the details. I think I have control here. I'm going to do this from sales. You can actually do it from purchasing as well, and you can actually do it from anywhere in the entire program. In fact, I'll just show that quickly. So if I do F12 and go to inventory, then I have my list of inventory in Keystroke. It's sitting there. This is my normal list, and the item I'm looking for is not on this list. If you notice, there's a new button right here in the middle of the top of the screen called Catalogs. If I click on that, it's then going to pop up and ask me which vendor I want to do it for. If I can't remember the vendor number, I can hit the insert key here and look up the vendor's name and see if they have a catalog, or I can just go to existing, and it shows me the 2 existing vendor catalogs I have in the system. So I pop up, and here's a totally different inventory database. You notice my real inventory database was our standard tutor data. This inventory database is something completely different, different stock numbers, of a much bigger database. You notice we have 44,000 items instead of the 128 we had on there. And I can go in here, and this works. It looks just like an inventory database. It works just like an inventory database. I can hit F3 and edit it. I can just hit enter and look at it. I can make changes here. And what's going to happen is, once I find the item I'm looking for on this list, if I want to be able to use that item, I can then click on this copy button, copy item button. I can also hit Alt-C. I can hit, I think it's Shift F8 as well, or you can have a button, program a button here to do all that for you. So I'm going to click copy item. It then takes the inventory item that we saw here and copies it to my regular inventory, my live inventory. And notice, though, it added it in as stock number 130. And this is an important point and something that people get confused by. The stock number field is not a real field. It doesn't mean anything. It's a record number. It's, if you're used to SQL, it's a primary ID. It's just a unique identifier that the system uses internally to identify that item. It's how items are found after you do sales, on reports, updating inventory, and all kinds of things. A lot of systems just don't show you that ID number. We do show it to you because it's a nice, easy number to reference if you're going to print out price tags and want to have an alternate way. If something doesn't scan, or you're not going to put a barcode on it and you want to have a number that you can type in, the stock number is the best thing to use because it's short, it's unique, it works very well, works very quickly. So we make the stock number available to you, but it's not a meaningful number. The fact that one's 4473 and the next one's 74, there's no relation there. Also, everything inside a database has one of these numbers. So here we have our vendor catalog database. It does have stock numbers. Those stock numbers are basically the order that the items were imported. There's no correlation between the stock number on the vendor catalog database and what the stock number is going to become in your inventory database. So it's important here to recognize that when I select one and I come up and I get a different stock number here, that this is just reminding you that it's going in as a unique item. It's being added to your inventory database. It's now part of your inventory, and the stock number has been changed. So now it's really just the next stock number on my inventory. So I can click OK here. It leaves me on this list in case I want to do multiple ones. I don't have to go through the whole rigmarole of getting back in here. Once I'm done, if I just want the one, if I want more, I can add more at this time, or I can just hit Escape. And now if I hit the End key, this is back to my regular inventory. we now see that there's the Feelings book journal that I copied from my vendor catalog. It has been added to my inventory database. Everything was copied over directly from the vendor catalog, except for the stock number was not brought over, and then of course on hand and stuff are not brought over. But all the other fields, the base price, list price, levels, the costs, where did these come from? These came from that record in the vendor catalog. So whatever was put there is what's brought over. And so it's up to you to make sure what's put into those vendor catalogs is what you want to have brought over, that the costs are correct and the prices are correct. So the cost should be your cost. So when you set up a vendor catalog, when you import it, you have to be a little bit careful of when it comes from what the vendor gives you and how you import it in. If they show you their price is actually what you're going to pay for it when you order it to resell it, then you're going to want their price to become your cost, because that's what's going to cost you, and then you would want to use the list price field or some other pricing for your pricing here, which is what you're going to be selling the item for. Okay, so that's really the juxtaposition was what it's all for. That's what we're heading for. Let's go in and look at the details of how all this happens. First off, I want to go back in there. That was the query function, so it's available anywhere within Keystroke you want to use it. You can also do the same thing. Of course, all inventory lists are the same no matter where they are in the program. So here's I just hit the F2, the insert key from the sales line item, and I see the same inventory here. What I did want to point out here, where I'm going, is this catalogs button. On your system, until you follow the instructions I give you today, you're not going to see the catalogs button. It's not going to exist. So you're going to go and look at your system and say, well, where is it? I don't have it. I must not have the right version. As long as you have the latest build of Keystroke, which is build 28. Actually, no, it's 27.
28.
Out there. Are we on 28 now?
Yep.
Okay. Build 28's been released. Okay, so build 28, that button is available to you, but you're not going to see it until you set up vendor catalogs, and that's what we're going to go through now, is how to set them up. So the first thing I'm going to do here is go out to the command prompt. And there we go. What data set are we using, Dave? Is it just data?
Tutor.
Tutor. Okay. So I want to go to my data directory. I do this at the command prompt because it's quicker and easier for me to show it on screen. I don't get the lag. You, of course, can do this through just the standard file manager, file browser within Windows. But what I wanted to show here is the dir after period just shows me all the folders below my data directory, and the ones you should already be familiar with, of course, toolbars and photos. There's a new one now called catalogs. Again, you won't see it until you start to use catalogs. If you use the import function, it'll create this for you. So you don't have to go out and create the catalogs directory unless you're going to copy a file directly into it, which is, I'll show you that here in a second. If you're going to use the importer to create your first catalog, the system will do it for you. Okay, in the catalogs directory, we have a list of files. The files are going to have numbers on them, and they're going to have the DAT extension, your data extension. What these files are is they're just inventory files. If I wanted to make a vendor catalog for vendor number 6, I can actually just copy from the directory above KSINV, which is my inventory database, to 6.dat. I've just created a vendor catalog for vendor number 6. Now, of course, it's the same as my inventory, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But that's the easiest way to set it up, is you can actually have a live inventory file, copy it to a vendor catalog just by simply copying the file to the catalog subdirectory and giving the file name as the vendor's number with the .dat, your data extension. And it's as simple as that. So you're going to have, as you do vendor catalogs, as you have more and more of them, this is where they're going to be stored. Now, if you have 1,000 vendors, chances are you're not going to have 1,000 vendor catalogs, but you could. Usually it's just going to be for vendors that you tend to do this from, where you're going to do in the custom ordering and so forth. Okay, so actually I just want to review some things here. Okay, in my Keystroke program directory, Dave's already preloaded our vendor catalogs. The vendor catalog came to us in an Excel format. I went into Excel and I cleaned it up and I fixed it up, and then I saved it to an ASCII delimited format. So I don't know, can you pop into Excel, Dave?
Sure. One sec here.
And the idea behind all this, and the steps we're going through first here, is we're going to set it up so that we can create a vendor catalog not by simply copying an inventory file from somewhere else, but by importing the vendor catalog directly into Keystroke. So we're taking the vendor catalog, our inventory list from our vendor, and we have to reformat it from whatever format they had it. We're going to reformat it into our own individual format for Keystroke. So this is the way the vendor catalog came to us from the vendor, or maybe it came in some other format and I've cleaned it up. Either way, we have our column lists. So we have the item code, the name of the product, the zone it's from, the source, the catalog number, and the price. Okay, then I have to figure out what am I going to do with that information. What fields in Keystroke am I going to put this information into? In other words, how am I going to what they call map the fields? Okay, item code's pretty simple. That's going to be my product code. What they call name, I'm going to put into Keystroke's description field. What they call zone, I'm going to use our class field for that. What they call source, I'm going to use this manufacturer's code. Catalog number, I'm going to put into the alt ID number. And then price, in this case, this was the list price, so I'm going to put it in the price field. And this, again, is where you have to be careful. If this price is what they charge you, then you're going to want to put that into your cost field. So I've got this all set up. I've got it cleaned up. I have it looking pretty much the way I want it. Again, with the Keystroke importer, you decide what fields and columns to import. They can have a bunch of other fields out here that you're not going to use. You don't have to go in and delete those columns. You can leave them there and just tell the importer to ignore them. I then would take this and do File, Save As, and then I'm going to save it to the same name, vCatalog, and I would, with the .txt extension, I do that. I remember to change the Save As type to being text tab delimited. Again, tab delimit is the fastest and best way to do things when you're importing text files like this. You don't have to worry about extra quotes or commas or anything anywhere else. So then I would save that as the file to my Keystroke directory. And one of the things to remember in this version of Excel is better. I was on an older version of Excel where I kept wanting to put it into my documents directory, which was not the place I wanted it, so make sure you're putting it into your Keystroke directory. Okay, we can, okay, that's already been done for us. I'm just going to cancel out of here. Or if Dave, if you want to cancel it, just and then let's go right back into Keystroke. So what we've done here is we've taken the vendor catalog in whatever format it was, and we've created an ASCII delimited file. Same type of thing you would do as if you were setting up inventory for the first time for a customer or retail store. There we go. We're now going to go to the importer, which is custom importer, or if you're using the navigation menu, it's just under extensions and then importer. Remember, when you first go into importer, the first thing you always have to do is go to setup, unless you already have it set for your defaults, and you wouldn't never normally do that for vendor catalogs. And we see we now have a new item on here called vendor catalog. This will be available to you. So you go down, click on vendor catalog, you get the setup screen. It's the exact same setup screen as inventory because the vendor catalog file basically is an inventory file. Oh, that's right. We didn't have this on here. So I'm going to create a new one. Call it. I could call it vCatalog, and that's what I'll put on here. But I'm doing that so it makes a little more sense. But really, you might have a different setup file for every single vendor, depending on their formats. So you have to be careful of, is it the generic vCatalog, or is it going to be vendor Ingram or whatever you have? The file I'm going to import is vcatalog.txt, and that's in my program directory, so I don't have to put any kind of path on it. You can, of course, use the browse button and find it that way. You then going to go through and identify what I'm going to import. Stock number, you never want to import stock number when you're doing vendor catalogs. The system will assign its own unique stock number, and then it's not going to use it anyway. So don't import the stock number, just leave it alone. The product code field, I'm going to go through and enter in which one it is. The code field, product code was field number 1. The description was field number 2, and I'm just doing this from memory from that Excel file. You, of course, could have Excel running at the same time and hop back and forth and look at it and find it there. In that particular file, the price they gave me is the price I want to sell it for. So that was column 5. I'm going to put that on here. Again, if it wasn't the price and it may be the cost, then you may want to put column 5 here under cost. I'm just going to put it in as my base price. And then I go down and I'm going to add in, well, I'm not going to do it now just to save time, but I go in and add the class field, which was column 3, and then the alt ID number was column 4, and I guess it was 5 and 6, but anyway. Set this all up, save it. Then I'm going to cheat here and not do it correctly. Make sure you don't have to turn on add new items because we're going to be doing a replace anyways, but just to make sure, you should turn that on and leave it on in case you do a merge import later on down the road. My database, the one that was in Excel, had the column titles on it. If you have column titles, you want to not import your column titles. So I want to start on record number 2 and then click OK, and it saves all that. I can then go over to import. Vendor catalog. And replace. This is pretty much what you're always going to want to do when you do vendor catalogs. You're almost always going to do a vendor catalog replace. Okay, and it's going to ask me the vendor number. What it's really asking me here is what's the file name going to be? Again, I can do the insert and look the vendor up. And it asks me, we don't have a catalog, are you going to initialize a new one? I can hit escape and say no. I'm going to import vendor number 4. Do I want to delete the old file? I'm going to say no here because I don't want to run through this. It takes a long time. But I would hit OK here and then say go ahead and do the import. It would then import all those records from the, actually what I'll do is I'll start it and then quit it so you can see it. I'll just pick a different vendor. So I'm going to initialize a new catalog file. It creates the file and then it's going to override it. It's going to ask me to don't worry about that. Import. Okay, now it's now running through and importing all those 50,000 items or whatever it is. I'm just going to go ahead and cancel that because just in the interest of time. I can now F12 inventory, and again, once you go through these steps, if you didn't have a catalog button before, you would have a catalog button now. The catalog button would appear here. You'd be able to click on catalogs. They then ask you which catalog you're going to want to work with. A change in the next build of Keystroke is if you only have one catalog out there, it's not going to ask you this question anymore. It's going to recognize that there is only one, so there's only one answer, so it's just going to pop you straight into that correct catalog. I go under existing, we can see we have the 4, 5, 6, the 7 which is the one I just added. We pop in there, and there's that inventory from that particular vendor. I didn't let it finish, so I only have 3,000 items. I didn't end up with 50,000 items like I should have. And when I ran it, I told you I cheated and didn't type in some of the stuff right. So I ended up, the base price was wrong. That's the alternate. I imported alternate ID into base price, so I messed up. I put in the wrong field number. No big deal. I'll just go back to setup, change it to the correct field numbers, and run it again. And we would be all set. Going to go back to catalogs, do this again. This is that database imported correctly with all the items. So again, we have, actually this is only 10,000 items. We have all 10,000 items, just a wide variety here. And again, now I can copy any item over to my database, my real inventory database, and work on it as I see fit. And that's it for vendor catalogs. They're fairly simple to set up. Depending on how your data comes from your vendor, they may take a lot of pre-work. You know, if they send it to you in some strange format that doesn't make any sense and you got to work it around, you may have to have somebody write a custom program for you. Most vendors, you can get the file in ASCII delimited, and if you can't, just demand it. Or you may need to hire a programmer to convert it for you. That type of work any programmer can do. We of course have Chris Finn that's available. Kevin Bragg once in a while does things for people. But really just any programmer off the street should be able to do a file conversion to ASCII delimited if your vendor doesn't provide it for you that way. Okay. The vendor catalogs are available. I don't know why I've stopped. Here we go. In the database manager as well. So if you want to go in and work after you've imported it, if you want to do a search and replace to update some of the fields, you can go under Database Manager, Vendor Catalogs. And here I'm working again. If you look at the top of the screen, whenever we're working on Vendor Catalog, the window you're in will say Vendor Catalog at the top of it. So this is the catalog for vendor number 4, the Candyman Company. And I can go through here now and clean up costs, prices, list prices. I didn't have it set up correctly to import the list price field, so I could do that. Do whatever I want to do to it and make it all work. Make changes, delete items, add items in if I wanted to, whatever I want to do. It works just like the inventory screens. In fact, it uses the inventory screens. So it's very simple and easy to work on. It's exactly the same way as your main inventory. So that's available to you there. And then let's just go ahead and I'm going to make a copy of this product. This is actually where this project started. One of the unique ways of using it, which a lot of people aren't going to do this way, I don't think, but at least one customer is. If you're in purchasing and generating a purchase order for vendor number 4, actually let's just do no vendor first, or I'll do vendor number 10. Okay, and I scan or enter or type or whatever a product code. And hit enter. That product is not in my inventory database. It then asks me, do you want to add the item to your inventory database? And this is the way it's always worked. That's nothing new. And in this case, I'm going to hit escape and say, no, I don't want to do that. I'm going to go back up to and change it to vendor number 4. And do it again. Okay, since this vendor number 4 has a vendor catalog, once it scanned the inventory database and couldn't find that item, it went ahead and scanned the vendor's database, vendor's catalog. And it did find the item in the vendor's catalog. And it'll do the same search as it does with inventory items. It'll search, if you have the alternate searches set up, it can search class and product code and manufacturer's code all at the same time. It did find the item. It's asking me, do I want to copy that item from my vendor catalog? I can say OK. So I've just added that inventory item to my inventory database. It copied all the information over for me. in the background. Went ahead and brought the item onto my purchase order. I can tell it how many I want to order and move right along. So it's that, with this system, it's that quick and easy to add an inventory item to your inventory database on the fly while you're in the middle of doing something else. It's there. If I hit the lookup key, you can see the items right there, right in my inventory, ready to go, ready to be used. So that's one of the big features and actually where it came from. One of the unique things is when I'm in the purchasing manager and generating a purchase order, if the vendor I'm working with, which is vendor number 4, has a catalog, you'll see when I'm on my inventory list, that catalogs button has been renamed to catalog number 4. So when you're in purchasing, it knows you're working with vendor 4. If you want to look at catalogs, it's probably going to be for the vendor you're working on, so it's automatically going to put that vendor in there for you so you don't have to keep typing the vendor number in. Okay, and that's about it for vendor catalogs. I will mention there's one other thing we are going to be adding for multi-store customers with vendor catalogs, where you'll be able to use this system with your master inventory, where if you have a subset of items at your smaller stores, they don't carry your entire inventory within the chain. They have a subset of items. Every once in a while they want to add an item from the chain. They want to do an order or something for it, and they want to be able to copy that item over. This will enable you to be able to use this same system to copy items out of your master inventory into your individual store's inventory. The store owner or the clerk will be able to do that with the right security. And we will cover that more at our dealer meeting, the training that we're going to have in Vegas, and I'll talk about that more in a second. Right now, while we're looking at this screen, let's go ahead and unmute everybody and see if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, Michael. How do you change the price on an inventory item? Because I noticed that once I got the price in there, it's grayed out, and I can't change it anymore.
Okay, that was the cost field. The price field is not grayed out. If we look at an inventory item, the prices can be changed at any time. The costs are locked in because those costs come from your purchasing. It's done via security level, so you can either give yourself the security level that enables you to do that, which is a -1, or you can go in and use your database screens editor and change the security level on those fields. So it is a 0 or a 1, so you're able to do it from there. The reason they're grayed out is that you really don't need to change, in most cases you don't need to change the cost on these items. You may need to do it with the vendor catalog, but on your inventory item themselves, those fields are updated automatically by purchasing. So when you purchase the item, when you save your purchase invoice that you've received the item, it will automatically go and update those costs for you and enter them at that time based on what you purchased the item for. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, that's the vendor catalogs feature. As I mentioned, we're going to do a little more with it with multi-store. We're going to talk about that more at our dealer training in Las Vegas, which is the first weekend of August. Going forward, between now and then, we are going, of course, to continue to have our weekly trainings, which is the our Thursday morning training, Keystroke Live. We'll have different people, and Dave sent you in the email this last week the schedule that's coming up. Really, our whole idea is we are going to spend from now until the dealer training in Vegas, the first weekend of August, getting ready for that, preparing you for that. So for some of you, the experienced dealers, if we're going to cover something that's not new, you could maybe skip a Thursday. This next week that's coming up, Update Installer with Mike Tabor, is something new, so everybody should be there to watch that. But in the coming weeks, we're also going to be looking at price tables again, tax tables again, and so forth. Anybody who's a new dealer or a dealer that's not totally comfortable with things like that, if you're not a certified installer, you should definitely come to those sessions. If you can't make it, we of course record everything, and we have it available through our YouTube site, where you can look at them after the fact. But everybody that's not comfortable with those subjects should watch those videos or should attend the meetings, and make sure you're up to speed on those, because it is a very short training. It's only 2 days. We are going to spend most of the time talking about new features like this vendor's catalog that I just showed you, some more features, things that are going to be added to it. So we're not going to spend a lot of time going through all the nuts and bolts of Keystroke. So it's important that you go to that meeting, that you have an understanding. And these coming weeks, we're going to help prepare you for that, so make sure you attend the meetings. Again, the format of the meeting that we're going to have, the training, Saturday morning is going to be geared towards doing new installations. So very important that new dealers are there. Even experienced dealers will benefit from it, but if you're an experienced dealer and you need to miss Saturday morning, you'll survive. But new dealers should try to make sure they're there first thing Saturday morning. We're going to be discussing how to quickly install and get a customer up and running. So it's not going to be the nuts and bolts of necessarily how to use and install Keystroke. It's more going to be the ideas of how to streamline the installation of Keystroke. So make sure you're there and prepared for that. If there aren't any other questions, I'm going to stop talking and wish you all an upcoming week. Again, plan on being there here next week. The update install of my Tabor is something that is brand new. It's an important thing we're doing that helps streamline Keystroke. You should all be there and get the explanation on that. So we will see you all next week here, same time, same place, same channel.
Don't forget about our actual anniversary is next Friday, the 14th, but we have our Turning Silver into Gold promotion going, that buy silver software maintenance, get gold for your customers. So if you have questions, give us a call and we can explain it. You can also get big margins selling Keystroke Advanced POS.
Okay. All right. We'll see you all next week and in the coming weeks, and hopefully we'll see you all in person first weekend of August.